So good afternoon, everyone. We'll be starting in just a moment. We're just waiting for our last speaker. Okay, so a very good afternoon to everyone. I hope you enjoyed your lunch, and I'm very happy to see you all back here. Today we're having a panel, which is a new panel for the ACEEEO, looking at the elections from the last year and trying to analyze those elections to look at potential best practices, shared experiences, problems if they occurred, and to have a discussion about what works, what doesn't work, what can be improved, and the various ways that countries are approaching their elections across the ACEEEO family. So today we have a distinguished panel from the election commissions of Croatia, of Lithuania, and of Moldova, and we'll have a session where each presenter will give a brief overview of their electoral system for 2 or 3 minutes, and then focus the rest of their presentation on the best practice or best practices that they would like to highlight, and then we'll have a discussion of those elements. So I'll turn first to Ms. Janja Dobrnjak, who is the chairperson of the Croatian State Election Commission, and we look forward to hearing about the Croatian elections and the particular system that they use. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues, and thanks a lot for coming back after the lunch. I'm not a chairperson of our Central Election Commission. I'm one of the members, one of the 4 members. We have a president, 4 vice presidents, and 4 members. I will not go into our election system because it's long and boring. I will just highlight some of our dilemmas and how we are thinking about actually introducing the new technologies, so-called new technologies, in our election system. So, very basic thing, who are the voters? This might be the simple question, but it's actually not. It's different in every country. In Croatia, voters are all Croatian citizens at the age of 18. So regardless, are they on the sea, in the jail, abroad, in the institution, they are all eligible voters. That also presents our base how to approach the voters. The thing of it is, in the past, each group of the voter had their own media. One were reading regional newspapers, listening to the regional radios, the others were looking only to the national televisions. Groups are formed around the nationalities, churches, whatever. Today, all of them are on the internet. And when I said all, it's really all, because there is a Google research of the internet presentation in Croatia. It's kind of the relevant one. And there is a 72% of all Croatian citizens are using internet. And one other interesting thing, regardless of the age, 60% of the internet users are over 55. So I think we're making a great mistake saying that only young people can be targeted through internet. Today, it's regardless. Sometimes even younger people are more turning to the social contacts, the real social contacts, where you see the groups of 50 and over people sitting around the table and everybody's looking in their own phone. Then there is another dilemma that we were facing. Shall we go out to the voters? And then this is a general dilemma in a digital world. Everything is there. The problem is how to find it. So in the way we decided, and it was a deliberate decision, not to go on the Facebook, not to go to the Twitter, but to have a very good web page. So even though we are not going there, there is always place in this digital space where they can find us, where they can find all the relevant information about the election, and it's a source that we are controlling. Of course, we are answering the mails, telephones, and everything else. But very often, we are referring them to our web page. The second thing, so this is about the voters. Second thing is the forming of the voters list. Here is also the difference between the countries. Some countries are having some kind of pre-registration, so voter had to do something to enter the voter list. And in the others, like it's mostly in Croatia, the moment you turn on 18, you're on the voter list. It goes automatically through the citizens' databases. They're compared, those with the registers of born, the registers of dead, registers of the addresses. So all these databases are compared before the elections, and they are forming the voters list automatically. There is one special group that need to be registered, and that's people living abroad. Why? Because their state doesn't have a record. Where are they? Are they still alive? Therefore, in a recent change of the legislation, those voters, Croatian citizens without a permanent residence in Croatia, need to have active registration before the election. This also influences a lot, and we have to keep that in mind when we are talking about the turnout, because it's a we cannot measure it with the same meter. We have the both systems, so to say, so we have almost 100% turnout on those that are previously registered. But we are having a relatively low turnout with the voters that are automatically in the voters list. Voters list is something I will come later on because, as I said, the thing of it is that we have all the data. Everything is in a digital form. But on the day of the election, we are printing this list out and then bringing it in a paper format to the polling places. This year, for the first time, we started a pilot project where, beside the paper voters list, we also had a tablet. So through this tablet, we are directly accessing all the data on the voter, being able to click the voter who approached the polling station, being able to tell the voter that approached a wrong polling station where he or she should go. And this is kind of the step forward in digitalization of the whole process, but it's very important, in our opinion, to have all this sorted out before and very surely, very thoroughly checked before we moved on the next step. Because idea is once when you are ticked, it's the same in Estonia, I think, you are ticking this digital list, you cannot vote anywhere else. But for the time being, we're just testing the system to have all this thing on the voting place, on the polling station, and to be able to help the voters find their names, find their polling station, or if they are not on the list, being able to connect to the central system to see why he or she is not in the system, and then check with the central system to see what's going on, so the voter doesn't have to go to the respected institution. Voters in the, no, oops, I think it's, maybe, no, something's wrong.
The other button, I think.
Okay, wrong button, sorry. Voters education, okay. Dilemma we are facing about the voters education, where is the thin red line? What is the responsibility of, as we heard, of EMBs, and what is not? What is the thin red line we should not cross in order not to influence voters' opinion on to whom they should vote? Therefore, very strictly, their right to vote, where and when the voters can vote, location of polling station, general information about the elections. Yes, we agree on this side, we have to educate the voters, even though this is not very complicated things. All of us living in some real world, these same voters are also, I don't know, registering their cars, they're submitting their tax reports, they're handling their social and health insurance. They basically know how to do it. This is not a very complicated process. But even though, okay, we are also publishing the information, telling them, reminding them, especially where there is some kind of the terms in question that they have to do some things until a certain date. For example, if they want to change the place where they would like to vote, there is a certain date until they can do it. So this is kind of the alert points that we are especially taking care of. The other side of the red line is a political propaganda. It's not, we deeply believe it's not ours to tell the voters what's their best solution, how the parties are organized, who are their candidates. This is the area of political competence field. So we are not entering it so far, not a bit, and we are very careful not to step on this side of the red line. Very quickly also, I'm also immediately going through the new practices, is this famous circle pre-election, election day and post-election. Pre-election, we are having a lot of things digitalized, so it's kind of the voters list, as I already mentioned, and appointment of the electoral officers, appointment of the polling station members, everything is going into the system. Their data, their financial data, their post, their address, everything is going into the system where later on the reports are formed. Also, we are having all the observers in our data, as well as the voters registration, as I mentioned. On the very election day, we are having voters turnout system that each and every polling station is letting via very simple SMS the turnout at a certain point of the day where they are then collecting all in one center, and it's going very, very quickly. Collecting the result, having a preliminary results. And one thing that we find useful for more technical reason is that we are tracking all the ballot papers. So from the moment they're printed out, they're having a serial number. And then through the system, we distribute them to the very polling place. So Central Election Commission in each moment knows which ballot papers on which polling station. This turned out to be a very good thing because sometimes you find some extra ballots in the box, and then judging by the serial numbers, you can trace if it is something fishy about it or not. We are treating actually the ballot paper as paper money. Mm-hmm. So this is an approach that we took. And then post-election period, all this data form the results, for all the statistics, form the, I don't know, ground for payment to electoral bodies. So all the way through the system, all data are entered into the system. Later on, we can take this data in a different format for all sorts of purposes. This is now just shortly through pre-election, but I already said it, election day. And of course, post-election. Something I forgot to say is this pre-election, we develop also this e-learning thing for the polling station member. We face the problems that not all the polling station members are well educated and not equally educated, because some polling station member had one information, the other heard the other information, and then we decided to make a central system. It's not obligatory. I'm hoping myself personally that one day it will be, but it's a very good system where everybody from anywhere can approach this e-learning course. It's also very, very kind of the modern thing. It's also with the videos, with the tests, with the quiz. Later on, there is a final test, and we can see, but only us, actually by the personal identification number, who passed the test, and at what score. We can even see how many times he tried to, how long times it took him or her to do the whole thing. And it's interesting, the number of the people, because it's open for the public as well, the number of people entering it, it's rising per election. And not all of them necessarily are ended up as a polling station member. There are people that are interested in that. And it's also, in the way, education of the general public, because once it's on our website, there is no authority above us, for example, on a polling station, that the member said, no, 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 you cannot be in the room. Because general public should know that rule is that, I don't know, observer can be in the room even when they're counting ballot papers. So it's kind of the double benefit of it. One, it's education of a polling station member, and the other is also education in the way of the general public. And then very shortly, as we see these advantages and disadvantages and challenges in the election, advantages is for sure the simplification of the whole electoral process. There's minimizing the human error on the different stages, and even more for the public transparency. The more data is out, the more data is visible to the general public, people inclined to trust it more. So even with if you have if everything is all right, if everything is perfect, if you are withholding data, if you are not letting everybody knows what's happening, there's immediately this conspiracy theory, they're hiding something go wrong, they don't want to show us. So in our experience, the more transparent you are, the trust within the general public is higher. Therefore, we also kind of having our results very quickly, preliminary results, our polling stations close at 7. In a simple election, already around 10 o'clock, 99% of the results are published. They are published simultaneously on our web pages, and all the medias are connected directly to information systems. So they're taking data directly from our information system, not from our web page. And also there is developed this mobile application where people can simply take the results at the same time on their mobile phones. It was a huge task for security reasons, for enormous amount of the kicks at a certain point of time. But so far, so good. So we are very happy with it. And the pressure of the questions, of the doubts are really far lower than it was when they have been waiting, and it's only on our web page. So this is kind of the advantage. Challenges is security of data, of course, but telling you honestly, we are leaving this to our information company. They know far more about it. They know, and they're really doing their best. And again, must say, so far, so good. Also, this includes the eventual hacker attacks. At 2015, there was a threat, and then the whole double system was installed so that we were able that within 2 hours switch from the general internet to the intranet of the that is used by the tax office. So if something went wrong, that we were able very quickly to switch on the other system. So where we are going, we are building the system. And I think this is Mr. Konstantinov said in the beginning, it's very important to build it slowly. Because trust is something that it's very hard to earn and very easy to lose. And this is what happened actually, I think, in Germany, in Netherlands, and all the countries that are trying that overnight introduce something that people don't trust without having the broader system. And I think this is a catch we will try to avoid, introducing this digital technology step by step. So now if people start trusting this voter list, if they start trusting that if they are kicked on one place, they cannot vote on the other place. If they trust the results they are having on the mobile, if they can check all this gives us a good ground to one day introduce also the e-voting, especially on the places that are distant. We said also voting abroad, voting on the ships, but step by step, and I think it's very important that once when you made a certain step forward, stop for a little to see how everything settles down, when everybody is trusting it, make a next step. We have a time, digital age is coming, so we don't have to rush. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jana, especially for focusing on the important elements of transparency, the openness of data, and especially the step-by-step approach which can build confidence rather than reducing it. Our next speaker is the chairperson of the Lithuanian Election Commission, Laura Matjosaitė, and we turn to her about the experiences from Lithuania and the good practices there. Please.
Thank you, Beata. And first, I would like to introduce briefly Republic of Lithuania, our electoral systems, and after that, I will talk about consciousness in the digital era and to introduce our experience of voters' education in the Republic of Lithuania. The parliament, Seimas, consists of representatives of the nation, 141 members of the Seimas who have been elected for a 4-year term. Any citizen of the Republic of Lithuania who is not bound or pledged to a foreign state and who on election day is not younger than 25 years and permanently resides in Lithuania may stand for election as a member of the Seimas. People who have not served punishment imposed by the court, as well as people declared by the court to be legally not capable of acting, may not stand for elections as a member of the Seimas. For the organization and conduction of elections, the territory of the Republic of Lithuania is divided into 71 single-member constituencies, where 71 Seimas members are elected. One multi-member constituency is also formed on national basis. All citizens of the Republic of Lithuania are eligible to vote cast their votes in this constituency too. 70 members, Seimas members are elected in this constituency according to a proportional electoral system. The President of the Republic is elected by the citizens of the Republic of Lithuania for a 5-year term. A Lithuanian citizen by lineal age who has lived in Lithuania for not less than the last 3 years has reached the age of not less than 40 prior to election day and may stand for election as a member of the Seimas, may stand for election as President of the Republic. The same person cannot be elected President of the Republic for more than 2 consecutive terms. The members of municipal councils are elected for a 4-year term among the citizens of the Republic of Lithuania and other permanent residents of the respective administrative units by the citizens of the Republic of Lithuania and other permanent residents of these administrative units. Municipal councils consist of municipal councillors. One of these municipal councillors is the mayor. One municipality forms one multi-member constituency. In each municipality, which is a multi-member constituency, voters elect councillors of that municipality, except a mayor and municipal councillor by a proportional electoral system. A single-member constituency composed of the whole municipality elect the mayor, who is a councillor of that municipality, by right by a majoritarian electoral system. And actually now I want to introduce our experience a bit. In the Republic of Lithuania, the Central Election Commission is responsible for informing citizens of the Republic of Lithuania and people permanently residing in Lithuania about elections and providing information about participation in elections. The CEC has to inform voters about specifics and mechanics of the voting process for each particular election. The CEC searches to provide complete information and the following aspects: people eligible to vote, how electors can check the voters list in order to ensure they have been duly included in them, what type of elections are being held, where, when, and how to vote, who are the candidates, who file complaints. The goal of voters' education is to make information to make information available and accessible to all citizens and permanent residents. Voters' education campaign should seek to have universal coverage of the electorate. The CEC is seeking to reach voters in different ways, with the help of media, social networks, printed material, competitions, telephones, and so on. Firstly, the members of polling district committees are bringing personal invitations to vote for all voters, together with a book of programs of political parties and a book of programs of candidates. For persons who has specific needs, the CEC prepares the book of programs of political parties, easy to read version and in Braille. Besides, the most important information about elections is published on newspapers in national minorities' languages. The CEC prints posters, booklets about the possibilities of voting, enrollment in the list of people who vote abroad, early voting procedures. The CEC is responsible to organize the debates of candidates of national television, radio, and private televisions too. Also, it prepares TV and radio video clips. The information which is provided by the CEC is translated into gesturial language. The CEC has the call center 1855 during election period too. The voters are permitted to receive information about enrolling into the voters list, all basic information about voting procedure, timetable, polling stations, address, telephone number of chairperson. It is possible to register complaints too. Some years ago, the CEC has created electronic services portal named Voters Page for all the voters. The voter is permitted to find out personalized information about elections, his here polling station address and a map to reach it, politicians representing him here, the history of voters' participation in elections, the main information about upcoming elections, and etc. The portal provides the possibilities to ask specific data or present a request for the CEC too. Moreover, it permits to write electronic message to candidates. The CEC has also a mobile telephone app which provides the possibility to observe the electoral process, especially electoral results. The CEC searches to make information about elections interesting and attractive to voters. For this reason, during the last parliamentary campaign, it has also created a TV quiz for voters, daily broadcasted 1 month before elections. During the last national election, the CEC has also started to work with children who will become voters once, organizing competitions of pictures and video. Moreover, the CEC has an old tradition in giving all first-time voters the Constitution of the Republic of Lithuania, with personal greetings of the President of the Republic as a gift. Besides, during the last national elections, another old tradition, to give voters the sticker "I have voted" as a gift has been renewed. Moreover, stickers "When I will grow up, I am going to vote" have been given to all the children who have accompanied the voters in polling stations. The CEC searches to inform voters in a way that everybody would be able to understand. This is the main reason why comics have been chosen to explain the punishment for the breach of electoral law. NGOs, especially students, collaborating with the CEC, create the platforms of candidates where voters are permitted to discover similarities of their own values and views to different politicians, to organize printing and distribution of electoral materials. Okay. To organize debates of candidates and parties, to observe elections. The CEC is searching to inform voters in the best way, at the same time using economical resources in a responsible way. We believe that the involvement of different parts of the society into the electoral process is the best way to ensure that voters will be more ready to take part actively in election. The CEC asks national singers, TV stars, and public people to take part in the electoral campaign for free. Moreover, the private and public televisions and radio stations transmit the video and radio clips for free too. This partnership between media and SEEC provides the possibility to give better information to voters about elections. And finally, in every election, voters' education is necessary to ensure that all voters, men and women alike, understand their rights, the political system, the contest in which we are asked to decide, and how where to vote, and how and where to vote. For a successful and democratic election, voters must understand their rights and their responsibilities, be well informed in order to cast ballots which are legally valid, and participate meaningfully in the voting process. So, we, the election management bodies, have the very important mission to work not only in order to grant the elections as administrative process, reach their aim, but also that the democracy would be ensured by informed voters. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura, and especially for those innovative and full-bodied voter education initiatives, which I think will be quite interesting to many in our audience. Next, we'll have Yuri Chokan from the Central Election Commission in Moldova and the experiences from the Moldovan context. So over to you, Yuri.
Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, 2016-2017 in Moldova, it was time of really and truly electoral reforms. Many changes happened in these 2 years. Particularly, our politicians decided in 2016. It was all the initiatives that were debated from 2014-15, but in 16 our politicians changed constitution and introduced back in constitutions provisions to directly elections of the president of the country, of Republic of Moldova. Before it, from 1996, last time we elected 1996, after it constitutions were changed and we become parliamentarian republic, and 20 years in Republic of Moldova president were elected in parliament. Last year constitutions are changed and CEC practically were put in positions to organize presidential elections on basis of direct voting. It was really a changing exercise. Honestly speaking, it was not simple. It was really difficult situations. Moldova is a small country from one side, but from other side, our voters, it's really divided in 2 big parts. And in many cases in Moldova, it's very difficult to attach voters to political doctrine. They attach it to more geopolitical vision. And in this case, our politicians do their best to convince voters to select them. And in 2017, other big changes in the electoral system, our parliament, our politicians decide to change model of elections of parliament and introduce in the Republic of Moldova for first time mixed model of elections in parliament. It means half from 101 MPs, exactly 50 MPs, 50, should be elected in base of the national multi-mandate district 1, and other 51 should be elected in uninominal districts in 51. Law were approved, become in force. A government creates special committee who divide. Last 2 months it was long work for 2 months. A special committee divide these districts, practically made the boundary in the Republic of Moldova. And last week, government approved decisions about this new 51 uninominal districts. It means next parliamentary elections in 2018, we will organize already in the new system. Elections should be organized in late November next year. One of the rules, inclusive of various commissions that are suggested, to provide deep amendments, like at least minimum 1 year before elections. For us it's again new challenge. Because in Moldova, okay, local elections we organize in the mixed system. Then mayors we elect on the majoritarian system and local councils in proportional system on the party list. But on the national level, it's first time in our 25 years history. From these 51 districts, 3 of them are delegated from persons or to represent territory abroad of Moldova. And it was a simple decision. One district for territory that's situated on east from Moldova, other district one for territory on the west of Republic of Moldova in Eurasia continent, and one district is for voters from United States and Canada. In this case, other 48 we have on the territory of Republic of Moldova. From these 48, 2 seats were decided to delegate to represent voters from Transnistria. It's left bank of the Dnistru, and it's separatist territory, temporarily out of the constitutional control of the Republic of Moldova, but in base of the state register of voters, and in this way? Technicians tried to help me. In this way? Excuse me. Okay. This committee approved decisions to offer 2 seats in the next parliament to represent this more than 200,000 people, voters that we have in that territory, Moldovan citizens. Like I already said, is the new exercise, and for it we need a new capacity. And here I will try to switch already for best practice that we have in Moldova. And I will try to keep your attentions for our capacity in the training ability that we have in Moldova. Already 5 years ago, we created a permanent continuing training center inside of the Central Electoral Commission. This is the part Central Electoral Commission is created, and it's the part of our infrastructures. We share the same building. Anyway, they have their separate legal personality. They have their own budget, own management. And in 2016 and 2017, it was first time that in their curricula appear not only training for electoral officials, for observers, for local public authorities, but first time in 16 and 17, they introduce trainings for groups of voters. Women's, young voters, first-time voters, different national minority voters, and the results are very good. We strongly recommend to use the same technology, because in our country, particularly, this kind of trainings have a really successful results. It was the let's say it was the small step, but we introduced, and every weekend from middle of 2016 in CEC we have weekend electoral school every single weekend, except national holidays probably, but in the rest every single weekend we have every single weekend we have weekend electoral school. For young voters, for first-time voters, we invite young boys and girls from school who should become voters in the 1 or 2 years perspective. We invite students. We try to provide capacity for test their forces to work in CEC. Second part of the day, for example, for students. It's some kind of voluntary at work, but they can be part of our team. They participate on our work sessions. They become like a real employer for half a day. And they select days, then they can come and to work with us. And we started this exercise last year on the middle of the year, because it was the part of the program to preparations for the new exercise to elect president of Republic of Moldova in direct elections. And this year we already engage 2 persons who comes last year to visit us like volunteers. They become really part of our team. They were employed in CEC. And this exercise we do not only in Chisinau. We create a group of the trainers in our training center from territory, and now we replicate this experience in territory, and the same in weekends in rayon centers, not in all of them, but it's target for next few months. We want to have it in all regional districts, we call them rayons. We will have this weekend electoral schools for young persons. Statistics show us, and presidential elections, in first time in presidential elections, we disaggregate that. Many of you were in Moldova in elections. Probably you saw how our electronic system works. We have electronic database with all voters in base of individual personal number of every voters. We divide it by districts, and we can show on screens and elections day information is not only about results, but about turnout. Okay, it's anonymous because we don't provide information that Yuri or Maria or Stepan come to vote. But we provide during the all-day statistic data. And it was first decisions for us in 2016, then we disaggregate this data on base of the age. Age and gender. 52% of women, 48% of men participate in elections. It's just for general statistic. But we find a huge problem. From all general number of voters, just 5% was young voters younger than 25 years old. Younger than 25, only 5%. 45% are persons who are older than 55 years old. In this case, we strongly decide to put the pressure, to keep our attentions, to teach, to provide more information, to inform young voters about their rights to be elected, about their rights to elect, how it really should be done, how easy it's how you can be part of the electoral management body systems, because in elections day we employ around 25,000 people in all territory. Results are good. We really recommend to do it if you think you need it in your country. The same good experience we have. We provide training during the last year, this year, we provide training for journalists. In many cases, journalists, or they are politically motivated in any cases if they work, for example, for any private TV stations, or they really don't understand notions of the electoral legislations. And we start from very easy trainings for them to introduce them basic knowledge about notions in elections. What means district commissions, what means polling stations, what is their rights, what is their capacity of different levels, how we tabulate results, how we provide these results, what we make publicly, how to use our electronic system. Because if you will open our website today, ACEEEO.BG, you can find in archive all results that we have in Moldova, political results of elections. We digitalize it and put it. In many cases, journalists connect or ask at CEC, can you provide for us information from local elections from 1999? They say, just open website, press the button, and consume information. And the same, these trainings help us to have easy life. Number of requests from media become less, less. Because we teach them to work independently and to use capacity that they have. It was in my mandate before July in 2016, we opened a library in CEC. All materials that we collect from different conferences and all materials that we produce, we collect in one office. Not so big, it's maybe around 20 square meters. But it's a full day open library for students, for researchers to come and CEC, to research this material, and it's easy to have a direct contact with CEC, because we have permanent persons who are responsible for serve persons who ask access to this library. And this become the same reference. We have few positive articles in newspaper and in electronic media about our library. last month, I met two persons, one boy, one girl who comes from villages that it's around 1,500 from Chisinau. They come to visit our library. It's the good example, too. Okay, I will finish here and I will ready to respond for questions if it's needed. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Yuri, and I think you raise important points of the importance of disaggregated data, especially to have much more targeted voter outreach, voter education, and the innovative ways that you've been approaching that in Moldova. So I think from our three speakers, we have a lot of food for thought, a lot of interesting examples, and I'd like to open the floor now to any questions or comments that anyone may have. So to Alan.
Madam Chair. Alan Best from Canada. Thank you very much to all three of you for your presentations. My question is very simple. Given the fact, the topic of the discussion today, the conscious voter and the whole bit, what was the voter turnout in percentage-wise of the last election you had in your respective countries? And was that an increase or a decrease from the prior election?
Go ahead.
Okay. I cannot tell you the exact percentages, but they're directly dependent on how important the topic is. So we are always having the lowest turnout on European election members for the European Parliament elections. Then it's parliamentary, then it's presidential, then it's local. Because locals are always very passionate one. So there they feel that they're picking up the person who is closest to them, and it's very important who will be. Of course, European Parliament is the furthest one, but it depends on, it doesn't depend on, in our experience, it doesn't depend on the education. It depends on the material basis. As you said, it's a message that you are communicating. It's a moment in time how important it is to option one or option two wins the election, and how well they actually mobilize their voters. So it's, in our experience, it's very little to do about anything else but the really importance of these elections on every person's life.
Thank you for the question. Actually, our voter turnout is last elections, last parliamentary or Seimas election was the same like in other elections, but we had voters turnout in young people, voters turnout more than 20%. Yeah.
In last local elections in 2015, turnout was 58% in local. In last parliamentary elections in 2014, turnout was, if I'm right, 49 and 8.8, less than half. In last presidential elections, it was exactly 48, last year. Amendments on the electoral code that was approved this year cut practically a minimum amount of turnout to validate elections. If before it was 1/3 of the voters, like a minimum amount to validate results, in the new law that we have put on the force from this summer, in this year, it's cut. It means if two persons come to vote, it will be validated.
Thank you very much. The next question from Lydia.
У меня вопрос к первому и к третьему. I have a question to the first speaker and the third speaker. While listening to you, we are left with the impression that there is no life outside the internet. Nevertheless, in villages, elderly voters do not use the internet. Can you tell us how these elderly voters exercise their right to go to the polls? Can they get registered in a different way, not in an electronic?
Reach voters who may not have access to the internet, and what you do, especially for older or rural voters who may not be computer savvy. So to Croatia and to Moldova to answer that question.
So it's more like we are discussing where to go. Of course, we still have even legal obligation to publish all the lists, to publish everything in the local newspapers. Then also we have the instruction for our local elections committee to put all the notes, to put the lists of the candidates on the visible place, for example, in the village. We are also having reading of all the lists on the radio. We are having presentation on the teletext on the TV. We have even special format of all this data for the blind people that their association is taking over. So we are still keeping all the old-fashioned way of informing the voters, and this is just kind of a new issue. But again, I must stress out, I'm looking at you, and pardon me, but we are not generally like young population. 2/3 of you are looking at your mobiles. So it's matter, do this elderly person have a device or not? And depends again on the country. For example, in Croatia, we are having more than 2 mobile per person, you know. So I was talking with the colleagues, they're sending the message on the Viber with their 18 years grandmothers. So it's coming even to the elder generation. But to answer to your question, what we are doing, we're also keeping the old-fashioned way of informing the voters.
Mm-hmm. So it's the icing on the cake. Yuri.
Лидия Михайловна, с глубокого к вам уважения отвечу на русском.
As regards internet coverage, it is huge. We rank 7th in terms of the internet speed. This is according to official data. I have 120, 130 megabytes per second. This is the internet speed on my mobile telephone. Almost all the settlements in Moldova have excellent coverage. The state operator provides wireless internet. However, we also use traditional methods. The electoral lists are published at the polling stations. The verification is also done manually. Any information requested in a traditional form by a voter is always received. Similar to what the previous speaker said, my grandmother, who belongs to the old generation, has a mobile phone and uses lots of applications on the mobile phone. Being a small country and having broadband internet and very high speed, this is due to the fact also that we have quite a few citizens living abroad. Our compatriots living abroad are also very well accustomed to using mobile communications. This has also contributed to the development of technologies. I haven't been to a bank office for a long time. I've been using only my mobile phone. All the methods that we have been using for decades are still valid and used.
Question, so I'll take it from the Bulgarian representative, please.
Много благодаря.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the excellent practices shared by our speakers. In the context of today's topic, specifically in view of the fact that all of us are united around the understanding that now in the digital age, we have a lot of information for the voters in the public space. However, not all the information in the public space is reliable and credible. A question to Jana. It is a provocative question. Jana, you spoke about the role of election commissions for informing the voters. you showed a red line that shouldn't be overstepped. What do you think about the following idea? The commissions are neutral. Is it possible, however, that the Central Election Commissions and their websites serve as a platform where political parties can publish their political programs and the CVs of their candidates? Do you think that this could be the reliable source of information provided by the political contestants? I'm going to quote France as an example. In France, the EMB publishes the political parties' information brochures and sends them to the voters. And these are, at the end of the day, the ballots. My question is, could the website of the Central Election Commission serve as the website for publishing, for the political parties to publish their information?
So thank you, Lina. The thing of it is, I actually showed you here what's the current standpoint of our electoral commission. My personal opinion is yes. In this huge forest of information, it's very, very hard for the voter to find a piece of reliable information. Although this could also be done, so first you have to have sufficient space, and the second very important thing, it must be done on an equal basis for all political participants. So you have to have very strict, as I said, this is my personal opinion. I think it will be good that you have half of a page you can write about yourself, half of a page you can write about the program. The same format, the same graphics, so everything must be in that case unified, that none of the political options or candidate can gain any advantage in election on the basis of this publication on Central Election web pages.
Okay, thank you everyone for all of your comments, for your interest. I think it's been a very interesting discussion. For me, the main takeaway points are the importance of openness and transparency in getting more information to voters, both to educate them, but also to have them be able to participate in a more conscientious way in the voting process, how technology can assist that, but how the fundamentals still remain, and how a step-by-step approach and gradual introduction of technology can help improve public confidence, which is really a very essential element to any credible electoral process, and once gained is quite easy to lose if you don't handle it carefully. So thank you very much all, and now we'll go to our next session, so we'll be cycling out. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Satisfied?
Yeah.
Okay. It's always hard, this 2 minutes part, because it's like...
Okay, dear colleagues, good afternoon. I don't want to say that we are approaching to the most important session, because all the session was very important, but this session is also important, because then we try to summarize what we achieved today and yesterday. And I think this is important to have a kind of quick assessment what we achieved, or what are the thoughts or recommendation what we would like to take with us, and what we are recommending to focusing on the coming years. So the first part and the most part of this session, we do this kind of summary, and after the four moderators, we do a very quick review of the draft recommendation. I hope you all got it, and I hope you didn't lose it. But there are some available copies somewhere in this room in English and in Russian as well. What I would like to emphasize about this draft recommendation, that this is not binding at all. So this is a quick assessment, this is a summary, this is a support for you if you have any issues in your election administration. I would just wanted to pick up the example of Bosnia, what just Irena was talking about, that there is no Facebook account of the Bosnian CEC. There, this recommendation might help, let's say, to convince those who are against this issue. So this could be more or less a supportive documentation as well, and I hope it helps to your daily work as well. And then the second or the shorter part of this session, then we do the closing remark, and we do the handover of the ACEEO presidency to the new presidency. So going into the according to the schedule, first I would like to ask Augusta to speak a little bit about the roundtable we have around the youth participation. I forgot to mention that we ask about moderators to speak about 6, 7, 8 minutes. You can speak 5 and 9 as well, but that's we more or less we have the time, and I think this is a reliable time to let's say summarize the roundtables and then the two workshops. So please, Augusta, go ahead.
Don't worry, Zsolt. You know I'm always timely. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I'm always surprised by how quickly these conferences fly by, and I cannot believe we're here in the closing session already. It is, however, my distinct pleasure to take a few minutes of your time to recap the findings from yesterday afternoon's roundtable discussion on how to reach the younger generation. We began our conversation yesterday by acknowledging the current digital landscape, noting specifically the already high and growing rates of digital use throughout the region, as well as the hope of the international community that these technologies can be harnessed for societal benefit. We also acknowledged the prevailing narratives surrounding so-called youth political apathy and disengagement or opting out of formal civic and political life, citing, of course, low voter turnout rates amongst youth, low rates of political party membership, and perceived lack of knowledge among young people to make informed electoral decisions. Additionally, we noted various barriers to youth participation, including unresponsive institutions, lack of relevant or timely information, bureaucratic inefficiencies, lack of transparency, and public accountability, among others. Conversely, we also noted that non-formal engagement methods, such as volunteering and other community-based activities, are typically favored by young people, many of whom do seek creative engagement tools in order to share their perspectives and influence policy and decision-making. In light of these factors, our discussants yesterday first shared their opinions on whether the way that young people engage with elections and political processes have fundamentally changed over time. The conclusion from the panel is that yes, young people's engagement has changed over time as a result of many factors, including new technological tools, democratization of information, and increased expectations amongst young people themselves. Discussants then shared their experiences with various effective methods and approaches in engaging young people, as well as how these approaches have been applied in their institutions. Of particular note in this part of our discussion was the pivotal role of civic education, both traditional, classroom-based curriculum, as well as other non-formal experiential programs such as election simulations, role-playing, and other scenario-based learning. In instilling the form and substance of democracy, again, these are the skills, knowledge, and values needed in order to help support the next generation of citizens. Also of note here is the helpful role of digital tools in sharing relevant civic and voter information, as well as making other resources, such as handbooks, available to young people. Our panel also noted the ways in which success is measured in youth-focused programming. Here, increasing youth voter turnout rate was highlighted, but also increasing the number of young candidates, young elected officials, young people who are able to take up various roles proximate to election administration, including poll workers, observers, or other volunteer positions. From a programmatic standpoint, we also noted monitoring and evaluation methods, including pre, post, and ex-post testing in order to measure knowledge gain and behavior change over time, as well as mixed methods evaluation techniques, combining both traditional quantitative methods as well as qualitative methods, including interviews and focus groups with young people themselves. Finally, in an effort to reflect on practices that haven't been successful in the past, we touched on a few examples where the discussants would have applied a different approach if given another chance. The main finding from this part of our discussion was that young people themselves must be included in program development and design. Too often, young people are treated as passive recipients of programs designed for them, rather than active participants who are passionate, knowledgeable, and well-connected in their peer groups. Thus, the message here that partnering with young people in the beginning stages of an initiative yields stronger programmatic results. Final recommendations from our discussion focused on a need for better or more comprehensive youth-focused data, noting that there are a few examples in the European context that offer such information. Operating in today's reality, that is, acknowledging the work that engaging the younger generation is never complete, and that youth-focused civic and voter education efforts must be a permanent part of election administration rather than simply boutique or niche efforts on the side. And finally, that technology can be used as a helpful tool to amplify existing efforts to reach young people where they are, developmentally, of course. The discussion ended on a hopeful note with an eye towards the future and a revitalized commitment on the part of election practitioners to reach out to young voters in their communities. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Augusta. Of course, that if we are going ahead, we have much more or many more good examples, and I think this was a good inventory, let's say, what kind of new practices we have. I don't like these best practices because then we have practices. We have practices how to reach the young voters, and even I would add the examples what just Yuri said, that this young weekend or something like that, when you are hosting youngs from the rural areas in the CEC, which is, I think, absolutely respectable initiative, and I think it could be followed by many of us. Any quick reaction or what you think that was missed from Augusta summary, and you think that it is important to highlight in the context of the involvement of the young voters? Okay, if not, of course, then you can send your contribution anytime to the secretariat. But then, if no any input, then let's move forward to the next roundtable, which was chaired by Leonardo, and it was about what kind of digital solution we already have. Leonardo, you have the floor, please.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues and friends. Just a few words on digital solutions for supporting the voter's choice, because you have an important discussion and important decisions to make this afternoon. In the roundtable that I had the honor to moderate, important and complex topics were discussed. The ideas of our distinguished participants help us to understand the challenges and opportunities we have to support citizens in the decisions they adopt during electoral process. Should our states in this digital age will regulate the debate to balance political information? Yes, they must do it. But how? How can they do it without interfering or limiting freedom of expression, which is a fundamental value of democracy? To be more precise, can we regulate social media such as Twitter and Facebook? It seems like an impossible mission. On the other hand, can digital methods help voters understand complex political issues while electoral campaigns are simplified? Of course. The amount of information that social media makes available to citizens is very important, but a lot of that information may be false. The citizen must verify the quality of that information and build a selection criteria that allows him to differentiate between objective information and fake news. Finally, can social media promote greater participation of citizens in elections? Yes, of course, but they don't do it automatically. The participation of citizens depends on cultural and historical factors that are different from one country to another. Reason why you cannot expect magical solutions from social media in all very different situations. The digital age is here to stay. The electoral authorities have to live in that reality, and they are obligated to seek and find the best social media to support citizens in their democratic decisions. That, I think, were the conclusions of our roundtable. Thank you very much for your attention.
Yes, thank you very much, Leonardo. I just would like to pick up what you mentioned about the cultural factor, and that we already had a lot of discussion that how the election system could be unified, and we always ended up with the conclusion that the election system around the world could be unified until a stage when we have the cultural differences. We had examples between Mexico and Europe, because Mexico, you can apply to host a polling station in your garage or something like this, or in your house. Then can you imagine it in Europe? Then that's an ordinary voter can apply for hosting a polling station. So this is not realistic, of course. This is a very simple example of the cultural differences related to the election. And then maybe I mentioned during my intervention in this roundtable that according to the digital cases that there is a big need of the government initiatives. Because without having a secured and state-managed infrastructure, no any digital solution will take place, even regarding to the election as well. So then in the European Union, there are many initiatives which support the member states to develop the infrastructure for the electronic services, and this is for the digital single market, this is for the identification of the voters, secure identification of the citizens, and of course the voters as well. So I think if all this kind of development will be in place, which even in the EU, it should be in place in a few years' time, then we have even good and confidential infrastructure for digital solution. And I think this should be the case, let's say, outside the Union as well, because this is a very important factor developing good digital solutions. Any other input you think that we have to add the summary of this roundtable? Then if not, then thank you again, Leonardo, for your moderation of this roundtable, and let's move to the two workshops what we had yesterday, and as we were divided, of course, I think it will be very important to listen to our moderators, how they summarizing the work you've done in the different workshops. We were a little bit hesitant how to divide the main topic into two parts, and the logic was behind the separation, that the workshop A was much more focusing on the responsibilities of the election management bodies, and the workshop B is much more focusing on the, let's say, the external issues, and especially on the electoral campaign. Of course, but there was a little bit mixture of the discussion and the question, but it's not an issue, of course. At the end, hopefully, everything come together in the recommendation. So first, let's go in an alphabetical order. So the workshop A, which was moderated by Paul. Please, Paul, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary General. Yeah, indeed, our workshop did focus on this whole question of what is the role of the EMB in cultivating informed voters, what degree and what level of activity should an EMB have to be involved in this issue at all. And we had three distinguished speakers from Bulgaria, from Palestine, and from Kazakhstan to present different viewpoints on this particular subject. And our Bulgarian colleague talked about the important role of mediation, including legal regulations, best practices, mindset, and culture, and the role that all that has in trying to make determinations that can reach consensus and bring divided people together. We also heard that the confidence and trust of EMBs and elections can increase or decrease in a country depending on the perception of citizens on whether the system is addressing social injustice. And we certainly see that in countries where there is a high level of perception of social injustice, that people do not perceive elections and democracy to be fulfilling their needs, and what role does the EMB play in trying to somehow address that issue. And a goal of getting people of different thinking to act together. People can have different opinions, but will they act together for the common good, and what role can the EMB play to bring that type of discussion to, so people can act together to advance leadership in the country. Our colleague from Palestine gave us some very good best practices of what they're doing there to relate to the stakeholders in the country to cultivate informed voters. He also said that voter education, while it's very important to a CEC, they can't do it all. So in Palestine, they have reached out to civil society organizations and partnered with them, and they have set up something called an Electoral Awareness Fund, and they fund 65 projects to encourage political participation by the citizens of Palestine. And it's run through the EMB and is quite successful. They also have programs that we see in other countries where they do civic education projects in early as a second grade to have mock elections, and they also do it in the 9th grade. Again, it's to engage young people in the process early in life so that as they get older, they engage in the process in a way that's more informative for them, and that because they've had this experience early on in life. Our colleague from Kazakhstan indicated that improving civic education of voters is the responsibility of the Central Election Commission, and that training should be incorporated into curriculum, and whether that's a curriculum for training of the poll workers, but also of working with schools and the such to engage civic education programs. The Central Election Commission, Kazakhstan, is implementing technology and digital changes, including website services to provide interactive tools and distance learning. And, you know, that's something that, you know, CECs, they provide basic information on their websites, but this concept of providing an interactive tool where somebody can engage with the Election Commission in this area, and also provide some type of distance learning through the CEC, is one that is creative and innovative. Kazakhstan is also creating new software for e-registration of voters and providing an e-format for feedback and for election results. Again, it's using digital technology to inform voters of various aspects of what the Election Commission does, the results, but also to get feedback from the voters on the questions they have or the work that's being done. It was telling that during question and answers from the audience, we had some folks who told us that civic education was really the role and responsibility of the Ministry of Education. And, you know, that should be true. I know I spoke about in the United States that it should be the role of schools to provide civic education, but the funding for civic education in the United States has dropped significantly in the last 25 years. and many countries face the same issue. And so there's this debate whether really should it be the CEC that provides this role of civic education to inform the voters, our Ministry of Education, to inform the voters at a young age about their role and responsibilities in a democratic society. So it was good feedback. And we also heard during the discussion that many countries in transitions have unique challenges to inform voters to change long-standing cultures. And I know from coming to these conferences for 22 years, that has been true in many of the transitions, especially in the 90s. The challenges that countries went through in changing the culture of a society that didn't have competitive elections and then did. We recognize that even today, in many countries that are going through these transitions, they're continuing to face these same challenges in changing the culture of a country to understand why people should be involved and should be engaged in civil society and in the process of elections and democracy to bring change to their countries. So as a conclusion, in recommendations, in brief recommendations from our speakers, one indicated that it was words that matter. The other indicated that we must remember that this is not about us, but this is about the voter, and that our role is to serve the voters. And lastly, that the election management bodies is really at the center of elections and democracy in a country and plays a vital role to improve the lives of all citizens. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paula. I think we absolutely agree with the last 2 points, especially that sometimes it is forgotten that the most important factor or player of the whole election system is the voter. Of course, it sometimes is forgotten by the mainly for the political parties. Of course, I'm sure that this is not the case for the EMBs. But yes, the voters should be in the center of all our thinking and all our activities. I'm asking the participants in the workshop A that if you have any addition or comments to what just Paul summarized. Then if not, as it shows that the conclusion was perfect. Thank you very much, Paul, for your work done. And then let's move to the workshop B, which I just mentioned was mainly focusing on the electoral campaign matters, but of course there was some other topic mentioned. Yuri, you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to thank to our speakers, Mr. Pierre Garon, thank you very much. Mr. Simon Jones, thank you very much. We concentrate our attentions of the methods and practice of financing of political party, like a part of general electoral process. And in continuations that just Paul Di Gregorio said and Mr. General Secretary just mentions, quality of electoral process is what our voters think about elections. It's not what we are, like a persons who are manage elections, think about elections. Because we are inside. We have all tools in our hands, and every single step, in the moment that we decide to do, we agree that is the best step that we can do, or the better step that we can do. But perceptions, quality of elections, it's the view from other part, from part of the voters. And here we try to debate and discuss from voters' point of view, what kind of vision of funding of elections we should provide. And we have this priority, let's say, to discuss from both sides. theoretical base, theoretical visions, code of good practice in elections that Venice commissions provide for all of us, and in the same way, very applicative issue that the international idea provide in support of electoral management body around the world. In any cases, in all our country, we managed to collect financial reports. Doesn't matter if we used the public funding in elections or for a political party or not. In any case, political party have obligation, and it's become a standard, to provide reports. We saw different slides, different solutions from different countries. In many cases, it's supplied directly to central electoral commissions. It's important to make them publicly. And here solutions are the same, different. And one of recommendations was to try to put it immediately publicly. Disclosure, it's one of important process and increase trust and results of elections and an electoral process in general. In manner, how we do it depends the final goal. Trust in the new power, trust in elections, trust in electoral management body. We debate theoretical part, how it should be done, how it's generally recommended to do, what kind of informations are recommended to be published about the political party donors, about political party expenditure, about criteria, how much money can be spent, how much money can be donated from individual donors, from legal persons, collective donors. And this way we find that in the countries that we were in the same room presence, delegates from this country, we more or less have approximately the same procedures. We can do our procedures better because it's not the new issue. It's not first time that we discuss about. In the moment that we apply new technology, we can do it better. We can create special electronic tools for our voters. Then they automatically can have access to information from one side, and the same electronics tools can be used by electoral competitors to display information. And the role of electoral management body or of the public institutions who are responsible for collecting these reports become very, let's say, intermediate, just the institutions who provide capacity to display it. In rest, in the new modern vision, electoral competitors, political party, they should upload their data individually in base of their own responsibility, and voters should have capacity to see it the same individually without any interference or reductions from some institutions. Doesn't matter if it's ACEEEO or other public institutions. We the same discuss about volume of information that should be disclosed. Because in different countries we have different volume of information that public institutions, particularly CEC, collect from political party. Its information in majority of cases it's about donors. Identity of donors. In any countries it's a home address, workplace, and so on, so on. And code of good practice recommended, and we the same come with these recommendations to publish on just information that it's enough to identify donors. Just it. For example, in debates we mentioned that home address can be excessive data for publishing in the open source. Anyway, this data are kept in the public institutions and the CAC particularly, and can be checked in case of, I don't know, some prosecutor's actions, for example, or I don't know, some criminal case if appear. But for generally for public, donors should be identified. Donations should be introduced inside of some particular procedures that should be created, because Parliament create the law, for example. Electoral management body in many cases come with procedures, period of reports, what kind of information should be inside, how it should be structured, how it should be delivered and published, and so on. And it will be good for all our electoral management body if during the time maybe we can create inside some common standards. in base, for sure, like I already said, in base of the code of the good practice of Venice Commission. It will be much easier for every voters in our country to do it. Recommendations of our work group was simple and maybe not new, but the recommendations was to do everything that it's possible to do to disclosure information about donors of political party. And the role of electoral management body is crucial in this activity. And all of us, we should increase our technical, human, technological capacity to manage this process better and better. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Yuri. Of course, this is the campaign financing is an evergreen story, and it will be an evergreen story because I think that the assessment was absolutely right, that we all have a legal base, we all have a practice in place, but the implementation itself it's very different. And we can say that this is just the fault of the political parties, but let's say not always. We know that, but this is a very let's say unfortunate situation when the political parties in the legislation they are regulating themselves. But so this is the practice. So and they are not taking it any time according to the even the Council of Europe recommendation, or even on an impartial way. And I think that referring to our main topic, that I think that the main question would be in the coming years that this digitalization of any part of our life will narrow the spending of the campaign money, or make it more transparent. So I think that in the coming years, I think we might have replies to these questions. I'm asking that participants from the workshop B, if you have any addition to what Yuri summarized. It seems there is nothing. Then Yuri, thanks so much for your assessment, and I have to inform the audience that you are awarded with the prize of the busiest participants today, as you moderated the session. Then you have a presentation about the Moldavian best practice. Then you now have the assessment. So thank you very much again.
Thank you.
But I would like to ask you to stay here for a few minutes as well, because then I would recommend to have a look at the recommendation, the draft recommendation, what I mentioned at the very beginning. And just to summarize, not as I mentioned, we do not want to go into the very detailed discussion by letters or by words, but what the feedback what we received until before this session, that it seems that it seems a little bit misunderstanding or misleading of the point number 1, which is about the unacceptable participation by the government institution to spread misinformation about the electoral process. And we all know that the relationship between the Independent Electoral Commission or the election administration and the government or the ruling parties, this is always a special case. And this exists then, of course, not everywhere when the ruling parties or the government, let's say, putting their resources, more resources than the other parties to win the next election. So the case is there. Maybe that's why we are proposing a new text which will be more clear. Then, of course, that this is a fact, and we, let's say, try to reduce this kind of distribution of misinformation. So, based on the proposals, some of you, we are going to let's say, read after this point number 1. And even in the main text before the point number 1, that was also about the question that this is again the same for the state intervention, that this is a threat, or this is a possible threat, or this is a real threat, what we have. But it's again, I do not want to repeat what I said. This is a case, so we do not want to hide it. We have to list at least in these recommendations. And what I also would like to add, and it was, let's say, I picked up from the articles of Beata, who wrote an excellent article to the election in Europe, but it was also mentioned during the 2 days that we also have to mention the question of the resources. And every EMBs should have a resource. Would it be an internal resource or external resources? I don't think that is a question, but then there should be a resource who or which is managing the digital issues, the social media issues, because now it became a profile or a profession of experts. So there are no experts on this field, and it's maybe there is in the agenda of the media schools as well in some years already. So let's say with also putting into the one of the point, we try to recommend the EMBs to think about it and to reserve resources, and maybe not especially for the election period, but in between as well, because this would be a continuous task what you have to do. No, I'm just, so this is more or less the input what we have received until today. I'm asking you if you have any subject you would like to see in this recommendation as an addition. As I said, that we are going to do a redraft and including in the package. Suad, I see. Yes.
Thank you so much. I think I would like to emphasize the role of a training center or center for education as whether or not as a skeleton, as an organizational structure of electoral management bodies. I think that these training centers has a vital task in field of electoral in education and electoral matters, especially to stakeholders, all stakeholders, and especially young voters and young first voters. And I suggest that we include one point that we are strong, encourage MBS to establish similar centers such as centers in Georgia, in Moldova, and New West in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Suad. Any other comments? Lydia, please.
Thank you, Zsolt. Thank you very much for accepting our observations and comments. Russia and Kazakhstan had some proposals on item 1. However, I think that this wording of item 1 is not fully acceptable. You referred to the impossibility to spread misinformation by the government institutions. What about other institutions and agencies, are they entitled to disseminate misinformation? I think that government in front of institutions should be deleted. Secondly, the impossibility of the state to interfere in the democratic process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lydia. That's according to what I said at the beginning. Please, Game.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment on, to consider both Ms. Featherston's and Mr. De Gregorio's summaries where they highlighted the importance of civic education at all stages of and throughout the electoral process. So perhaps that is one aspect that we could consider in terms of engaging conscious voters to make sure that they're conscious and informed participants. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. That's, man, I have kids in the kindergarten, so I'm always thinking about that. They already have to start in the kindergarten, even electing kids who is in duty on the day or something like this. But yes, that is true that we can never start early enough. So yeah, thank you very much for this proposal as well. Any other comments or proposal? Of course, Augusto. Yeah.
Yeah, perhaps that sort of in light of what George said, and then also looking at point number 6, maybe it's possible to work in some of the recommendations from the roundtable session, including, use of relevant youth data to inform targeted sort of youth-focused campaigns and/or ongoing consultations with youth stakeholders in light of what we said about young people informing program design, maybe proximate to each electoral cycle to inform, strategy on youth. And that would be something ongoing to consider. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Augusta. Maria, please.
I will not make any proposals. I didn't want to interfere, but after all of us are experts in election processes in one degree or another. I believe that we should not try to involve children from early childhood. I mean, babies, infants. All these babies, infants, they're already born and they are digital natives. But we should keep their childhood. We should leave them with children. Of course, I believe that it's a different matter for adolescents, for young people. They should be informed, but we should try to protect infants, children. I'm sorry, it is just my personal opinion.
The issue is that they're born with a smartphone in the baby cot. That's no doubt about it. And in a few years' time, they will ask the question, why I'm not able to vote via my smartphone. That will be the case in 5 to 10 years' time. You can transfer, as Yuri mentioned, hundreds of euros or dollars via your smartphone, which is even much on your interest than just casting your vote. And you cannot cast your vote via the smartphone. So the generation behind me, at least, or maybe behind Yuri, or not mentioning the female colleagues, then they will have this demand very soon, very soon. So we cannot stop it. We cannot stop it. So we have to, not for tomorrow maybe, but in a 5 to 10 years' time, that it will be a question. But I hope that even with what I just referred to, that what the EU is developing, then we will have a good infrastructure to do that. Pierre.
Yes, concerning point 1, perhaps there is a misunderstanding between the issue of fake news, which is under point 3 and concerns fake news by each source, and excessive involvement of public authorities in the electoral process that is a violation of the duty of neutrality. So perhaps point 1 could be reorientated not to talk anymore about misinformation, which could be covered by point 3, but to insist on the necessity of the neutrality of state institutions and avoiding propaganda, which is not in every case misinformation and abuse of administrative resources, for example. But it's not necessarily at any rate to develop all the cases, but just to remind the necessity of neutrality of the state. And then the second sentence, at any rate, is already more general.
Yes, thank you very much, Pierre, for these important clarifications. Yes, please.
Iva Uivkov, Bulgaria.
Iva Uivkov, Bulgaria. I check carefully the draft recommendation. I can see some mistakes in the translation. Nowhere does the Bulgarian text talk about propaganda. I would like us to just take some time and to do what we want to do. The first point is completely incomprehensible for me in Bulgarian. I read it 5 times. I couldn't make a head or tail of it. Then number 3 basically says nothing. Fake news should be investigated and exposed. I mean, of course, we're not inventing the wheel with our recommendations if we make such recommendations. I fully agree with the rest of the recommendations, but I believe that we should use a more accurate, clear statements. Otherwise, with this version of this recommendation, the only thing that we show that we cannot reach young people. I do not have children in kindergarten. I have 16-year-old children, and if we do it for ourselves, we can continue like this. But what we need is just to have more time in order to prepare a decent document.
Yes, we were working on the basis of the English version, and of course we discovered, let's say, some discrepancies already yesterday in the Russian and in the Bulgarian version, but we didn't want to make a correction only on the final version. So yes, of course, I hopefully that point number 1 and point number 3 will be we'll have a content in Bulgarian, Russian, and the English version based on the final version. So I hope that it will be clear in any language. Any point on this? If not, then thank you very much for your inputs for the recommendation and for the workshop and the roundtables, and let's have a round of applause for our moderators for their hard work. Thank you very much. And before me moving to the closing remarks, I just would like to remind you that after the closing remarks, you have some minutes to change as we are leaving to the cultural tour at 4 o'clock. And we come back to the hotel and we are leaving to the dinner at 7. So please be in the lobby on time. And you can see that there is a recommendation for the dress code, but as usual is a recommendation only for the male colleagues, because the female colleagues always know what to wear. But I think it's important that we are now, or after some minutes, we are now turning to the less formal mode and turning to the more casual format. Dimitri, you would like to add something?
Esteemed chairperson, esteemed participants, I believe that it would be wrong to leave without saying thank you to the teams of interpreters, because without them, we would not have been able to understand each other.
Because then let's wait for the very end. But now I would like to ask Evelina for some closing remarks, and now this is the last few minutes of the Bulgarian presidency of our association. Evelina, please.
Благодаря и благодаря на модераторите тук, които направиха.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the moderators, because you have actually made my task easier. Esteemed ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, experts, representatives of international organizations, prominent international organizations with significant contribution for the development of election processes across the world. Esteemed friends, we are approaching the end of a very fruitful conference. The topic of this conference has been well selected because we, the election management bodies, started discussing issues that will be further debated across the next 10, 15, or even more than 15 years. When we discuss the use of ICT in elections, we came up with the idea that they basically help ensure transparency, accountability in the work of central election commissions. They benefit citizens. They help raise the awareness of the public. They provide clear, accurate, and reliable data to the citizens about all the details related to the election process. We also mentioned how technologies are used in order to raise awareness and inform other participants. Technologies can be used to help voting as well as to help count the votes and account for voting. We shared best practices. We talked about e-voting, machine voting. We also shared similarities and differences among our systems. We also raised the issue of the penetration of social media in our life. We also launched a discussion on how to strike a balance when it comes to freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of the media, as well as regulation to provide for equality, equal treatment. We discussed the flow of data, the threat of fake news, as well as the role and the function of EMBs in this process. We also discussed the issue of threats related to technology in general, data security, the threat of DDoS, hacking attacks, as well as sabotage, making data available to the public, personal data protection. This has been a very good debate that we have been having. Perhaps the issues that we have raised cannot be solved immediately right away, but this debate will continue in the context of penetration of technology, in the context of e-governance, because e-voting is part of e-governance in general. I hope that we'll continue to discuss all these issues because we, in our capacity as experts, specialists in elections, we can help our politicians, we can help our citizens, we can help our researchers with solutions and proposals in this area. In conclusion, I would like to share with you that it has been a great honor and great pleasure to hold the presidency of our organization. Now, I would like to hand over the symbol of the presidency to Laura. She will organize the next conference. Laura, I would like to wish you to continue with this open dialogue in order to achieve the goals of our organization. Thank you very much for attending this conference.
So thank you again, and actually I'm proud that next year the ACEEEO 27th annual conference will be held in Vilnius in Lithuania, and after 20 years this wonderful bird will be in Vilnius. So I hope to see you, everybody, in Vilnius, and see you soon next year. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. I don't know if I think it was announced in the General Assembly meeting, but the exact date for the next ACEEEO conference is on the 5th, 6th, and 7th of September. So this is early September. I hope you are back from the summer holiday, and I think it's a nice season in Vilnius. So we hope to see you all. One of the main topic of the conference will be the cybersecurity issues with a little bit more theoretical topic, but we are still cooperating with other international partners not to repeat the same topic in the different conferences. No, of course, there should be a flag, the ACEEEO flag, to be handed over to Laura. I hope we have this flag somewhere in this building, and we give it to you. But now thanks to Evelina, not only for this conference, but for the whole year, because she represented the association in several meetings. Even we had a nice executive board meeting already here in May. So thank you very much to you personally, all the staff members of the Central Election Commission, and let me also thanks to the technical staff, the hostesses, and of course the interpreters, as it was already said, to support us to understand each other. Dear colleagues, as mentioned, in a short term we are going to see each other in 50 minutes. In a longer term, we see each other in 300 days, more or less, in Vilnius. Thank you again, and now the conference business part is over.